Welcome to the complete opening repertoire for the French defense, part 3. Today we're going to be talking about what I consider to be the most challenging response to the French defense, which is e4, e6, d4, d5, knight d2. This is really hard to play against because the main move that people play, knight f6, is really bad for black because white has a really big win streak, like good results for white. So also, the top players play c5, which is really boring and dull, maybe it's equal, but I want to just play for a win. So I recommend you play this middle version, bishop e7. So this one, I just asked Alex Lindemann, a really good strong GM from America. He recommends to play for a win, you want to try to do bishop e7. Also, this move is a move that is recommended by Wesley So, that I had a lesson with. So we had a lesson like this. So he says, what do you do against e4? I said, the French. So what do you do against the Tarrasch variation? I said, bishop e7. So he's really a advocate for this bishop e7 line because he plays that himself. So we're going to see a game, in fact, of his during the lines. So the main moves are knight gf3, bishop d3, c3, and e5. So after bishop e7, knight gf3. Now we go knight f6. So I can go e5 or bishop e3. So let's look at e5 first. Black goes now knight d7, bishop e3, c5, c3, knight c6, castles, and then we go g5 because the king is on the king's side. We can do this g5 move. It's really cool. So now white goes d takes e5 most of the time. Now we go g4, attacking the knight on f3. Knight d4. Knight c takes e5 is very important to be specific where to take the knight on e5, but we'll just know why that is in a moment. So attacking the bishop on d3, so they go bishop e5. Now e6 takes on d7, bishop takes d7, f4 opposite, knight to f3. Now knight g6. b4 happens to defend c5, f6 to plan the e5. White normally goes bishop a6 to prevent kingside casting. Now we just go e5. Now e2 happens, and now we go just bishop e6. So with a very strong center and the bishop pair, black is standing much better than white. So going back here, let's say if they go bishop d3 instead of e5. So now we go c5. So it's a general rule that if you see bishop e3 in the French defense, we go c5. We'll see that later on. Now white goes either e take d5, c take d5, or c3. Let's see the e takes d5 line first. Now we go queen d5, d takes d5, we go knight d7 to try to take on c5 the knight and attack this bishop. So then after knight d7 they castle. We just take on c5, white goes bishop e4, queen d8 to save the queen e2, castles, rook d1. So wherever you see the rook and the queen the same file, you want to move the queen. So queen c7 I recommend. Knight f1, now b6. So bishop b7 is coming, rook f d8, rook ac8. Easy game for black, and I think that black is doing really good to play for win. So now let's look at the c3 line. So c takes d4, takes on d4, takes on e4, knight takes e4. And this line will be covered much in depth later on in another line. So now we're going to talk about the d takes c5 line. Now we just go castling. They castle and we go a5. It's important to do that because knight a6 is coming up. c3, knight a6, e5, knight g7, rook e1. Now knight a takes c5. So it's very important to do that, and I'll be seeing this theme really a lot later in another line. So now I'll move forward. Let's look at the bishop d3 line. So in this case, we go c5, as we saw before. So either they can go d takes e5, e takes e5, or c3, like the before. So let's say the e takes d5 line first. Queen d5, knight gf3 to prevent bishop queen d2 threats. So takes d4, castles at f6, and black is doing already much better. So this is not a good line for white to try. So going back here, let's look at the d takes c5 line. In this case, we go knight f6, queen e2, castles, knight gf3, a5, looks similar. So castles, knight a6, e5, knight e7, c3. Now knight a takes c5, so bishop e2. Now we're gonna have a more in-depth look of how to play this position. So now black goes, you guess it, well maybe not guess it, but b5. Now pop quiz, can the queen take on b5? Well, they can't, because bishop takes 6 is gonna be a skewer to take the rook on f1. That'll be not good for white. So they go usually knight d4. Now black goes queen c7. So another question, can we take this pawn b5 knight? They can. They're going to trade a flank pawn for the center pawn, which will be really good for black. So they can't do that. So normally they go rook e1 instead. Now black goes b4. In this case, white goes queen e3. Black goes to f5. En passant, knight f6. And black is standing very well. Bishop d6 is coming. Easy plans, and we have more space. And more easy plans for the extra space we have. Finally, in this line, we'll talk about c3. So in this case, we're going to do t take d4, takes in d4, takes in e4, knight to e4, knight f6. We're going to be talking about more in depth. That's one. So knight f3, knight c6, castling, bishop e3, and now we go knight b4, attacking the bishop on d3. Knight f6 comes, check, bishop takes, bishop e4, now knight d5. And now is a really good centralized knight, so queen b3, b6, plans to do bishop e7. It's really good for black. We have a d pawn to target, and we have a good game overall to play for the win. So now we're going to look at c3 on move 4. In this case, we're going to go c5. So we're going to look at the takes in d5 or takes in c5 line. Let's take the pawn in d5 first. So queen d5, knight gf3, takes in d4, bishop c4, attacking the queen. So if you're good at endgames, I would suggest queen d8. It's not as good as that if you want to do really good at endgames, queen h5, and black is much better this way. So let's say if you're not a good endgames player, you want to build queen to e8. So now this knight takes d4, knight f6, castles, knight do f3, queen c7, attacking the bishop on c4, queen e2, a6 to block everything from b5, no knight b5. Rook e1, now bishop e6. It's important to make sure that we don't have some tactics that will be sacking on e6. So bishop e6 is important. Now bishop e5, knight b7, and black is doing very well, and we're going to try to do our best, but this is not really significant compared to the line with the queen h5. So let's look at that. So after this bishop c4, let's look at the main move that I recommend, queen h5. In this case, we go after knight d4, queen d1, king d1, knight f6, rook e1, bishop d7, knight b5, knight a6 to defend against the fork on c7, king c2, castles, knight f3, rook c8, attacking the bishop on c4. And it's very important to make sure that you be precise as white, because this one, knight b4 comes in, that'll be not good. And after bishop, let's say e2, we go bishop c6, and he's thinking, oh, there's a fork here. Well, it's going to be a costly pawn that they're going to grab, so they're going to do bishop e4 check now. So the king has to move. Let's say maybe something innocent looking like maybe d1. And after d1, we have rook c d8 check. Alright, so looking really dire. Bishop e2, naturally, but now knight c5. And it's going to be having an absolutely crushing position. The advantage is really is winning decisively. So there's no problem for black in this case, and we're going to go on to win the game really soon. So finally, we're going to talk about the d takes c5 line instead of e takes d5 line. So now, bishop c5, bishop e3, or knight b3. We're going to look at both. So bishop e3, knight f6, queen e2, knight c6, knight gf3, castles, bishop b6. It's important to do that because knight b3 is coming. e5, knight d7, knight b3, like we said. f6 is an important tempo that we gained. So, takes in there, knight takes there, knight d4, queen d6. So, bishop e3, we go e5, centering, attacking right now. So, knight c6, pawn takes c6, bishop b6, but now e4. So the white has to be very precise to survive. So they have to go bishop e4, knight g4. White has to be very precise again. We need to go as white bishop e5, knight e5, knight e5, queen e5, f3 can be played, but bishop e5. So we're going to have a very good advantage to try to play for the win because we have secured more space. We have a really good active plan, easy play, there's no problems for us, and black will be just fine to play for win. Now let's look at the knight b3 line instead of bishop d3. So in this case we go bishop b6, e takes d5, takes in d5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop e5 check, knight c6, and there's two moves that I can play here, queen e2 or castling. So let's look at the queen e2 check line. In this case we go knight e4. And now white goes bishop e3, we go castling. They go castling queen side or the king side. Let's look at the queen side castling because it looks cooler. So now rook e8, rook h1, bishop e4, h3, bishop h5, g4. They can avoid that because no king g1. So now bishop e6, knight f d4, knight b4 is a really cool shot to just totally win the game. So they take the knight on b4, they're going to cost that because rook c8 check is killer. So where to move the king, well, is really not so simple. You don't want to do a double check of king b1 because knight c3 is like a killer taking the queen. So I could try knight c5, but after knight c5, takes in c5, rook c5, the game is pretty much over. So king d2 actually loses to mate in 2. Yes, the mate in 2. Bishop a5, b4 has to be played, and mate on b4 with the bishop. So going back here, let's say the castle king side instead. So now we go bishop g4, h3, bishop h5. They go rook ad1, rook e8, rook fe1, a6, bishop d3. Knight g3 is a really cool shot to try to win the game. So queen d2, they can't take a g3 because, oops, rook e3 is going to be a killer move. So they had to do queen e2. But now we go bishop f3. Bishop b6 is played. Now we go queen b6. After they take on f3, we go knight h5. Takes in the a8 check, takes in back. Bishop f1, knight f6, and black is having a really good time to try to play for the win because white's king side structure is totally in shambles, and we have a really solid position to try to play for a win. So even earlier, instead of queen 2, let's say the line castles. We go castling, bishop e5 to try to pin the knight, a6, bishop e2, now rook e8, knight d4, queen d6 to get out of the pin. Bishop f3 happens, but black is going to be paying the cost, knight e4. So I can try to do something tricky like rook e1, saying that if you take my bishop, I'll take your queen and rook with rook e8. So instead of that, we're going to be smarter than that. We'll just play knight e5, and the game is really decisively winning from black's perspective, and there's no problems at all for trying to play for the win. And now we're going to finally conclude with e5 and move forward. In this case, we're going to be just combine these things that we learned in chapter 2 in this complete opening repertoire, the advanced variation. So after c5, there's two main moves, c3 or queen g4. Let's look at the queen g4 line first. So we're going to do king f8. After d takes c5, knight c6, attacking e5. Knight gf3, h5, attacking the queen. So there's no surprise to do this one because if you see chapter 2 is normal. So queen e3, h4, queen f4, g5, attacking the queen again. Queen e3, knight h6, bishop d3, saying that if you do knight f5, I'll take that with the bishop. And he does that, but we still take an f5 back. Knight d4, f4 is just completely crushing for black to win the game because we have the bishop pair, we have a very steady initiative on the king side, we have the lead development, so the game will be over quickly soon, and also we're going to just win a bunch of material. So now we're going to look at the main move and last move of this chapter is c3. So knight c6, and white goes knight df3 usually, but let's see why knight gf3 is not so good. Black goes bishop e7, this advanced variation rules that we lead into chapter 2. Bishop 3, takes in d4, takes in d4, knight b4, bishop b1, and bishop b5. There's no way to castle king side, and the game is really good for black, and there's no reason why that white should allow this. So that's the reason why people go knight df3. We go as black takes in d4 anyways. Takes in d4, bishop b7, like we've seen before, bishop b3, knight b4 again, bishop b1. Now a cool thing that we can go is queen a5, trying to do a double check on d3 or c2. Bishop d2 happens, and now we go bishop a4, aggressive move. b3, bishop b5, knight e2, queen a6, a4, we're seeing it, and I'll be just following a game that I see that is being played by a game named Kasparov's white, but not Garry Kasparov. No. Sergey Kasparov is white, but the game was a win for black. So let's see how the game goes. So white goes knight f4. g5 happens now. Knight takes e6 was a really bad sacrifice from white because he wants to do initiative, trying to just press for initiative, but it's at a cost for a lot of pieces. So takes an e6 back, takes the b5, queen a1. So a lot of people are saying, oh, we're going to win the queen by just doing the bishop e6 check and just taking the queen, right? Well, no, not really, because of this one, take there, queen a1, knight c2 is a fork between the king and the queen. That'll be just crushing for black. So that's the reason why the Kasparov guy played castling instead. So now black goes just king d7, and the game is pretty much over. There's no thing that white can do as compensation for all the material. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.